Alright, so I normally do this every 4 story chapters or so, but there was some story developments in chapter 21 that got me thinking and wanting to commentate on this a little sooner. I don't know, maybe it would have been better for me to sort of wait and see how they're going to play things out, but I'm just going to do things this way anyway, because why the hell not? So, spoiler alert through chapter 21. So the story sort of picks up with Mavier and Marnie eventually both betraying the Four Hounds, which is something I was actually kind of surprised about. I knew Mavier was going to, because I kind of spoiled myself on that and saw him come up under the list of playable units. But I don't know, I just didn't really think they were going to split them in half, essentially, and have another person also sort of go against them. The one thing I will say is that I like the development leading up to this. Particularly with Marnie, we learn a lot about her backstory. We see her have a lot of inner turmoil about what's going on. We see her kind of redeem herself, and where it got her killed and didn't really look like it had much of effect at first, it did play probably a big role in what was transpiring. And I like having tragic characters too, but at the same time, I feel this role may have been better suited for Mavier. I mean, even before we knew he was playable, I saw some people speculating he didn't seem like the rest. He seemed like he may not play along with the Four Hounds forever, depending on how far they go. And don't get me wrong, I'm interested in seeing his support conversations in that, but he comes off as just more reserved and not as interesting as Marnie. I feel like I would have been much more interested in seeing how Marnie adjusts to being on the Divine Dragon's side and what sort of interactions she would have had with other characters. I wouldn't say this is as bad as the Kana situation that I made a whole video on from Parasite, but still kind of a shame to see. Two things I kind of thought of with it though is I would actually kind of like, I don't really think Fire Emblem does this a lot, but I know they kind of did it with Holst in Three Houses, where we just heard a lot about from support conversations, particularly from Hilda, to the point where he felt like he was a decently important character in the story, even though we never interacted with him at all. So it would be interesting to sort of maybe have some supports with Mavier or Valen in particular, sort of help Marnie live on through that, to see, I don't know, maybe other stories about her struggles and just adventures with Mavier and the Four Hounds. I think that would be interesting, but I don't really know if they're going to go that route. Another thing, though, and this might be diving into DLC spoilers, so I saw a leak, an alleged leak. I don't know if it's real or not. I think it came from a data mine that someone supposedly did, but I think they found code names for new units in the DLC, and there was some speculation that they were kind of similar to some of the Four Hounds names. We obviously have the first trailer now for the DLC expansion. It doesn't seem like they're going in a direction particularly focusing on the Four Hounds, but I wouldn't completely rule it out. And I don't know, it would be in general interesting to see if these characters turn out to be an alternate universe version of the Hounds who we didn't get to play as, and to see their interactions and the differences with their counterparts. Seeing something like that would be pretty cool. It almost reminds me of Awakening's Spot Pass characters that we got later on. Or even if they just did something like that again in an update, to just have a little fun and give some characters an opportunity to be played as and fleshed out in support conversations even more, regardless of circumstance. That was the pre-mission story. Post-mission story, I don't know, it just didn't sit right with me. And like I said, maybe I'm talking out of my ass. Maybe it'll be explained decently in a little bit. Maybe I missed some sort of detail. But to kick things off, At first I was actually kind of worried, because another mild spoiler I saw was that there's multiple endings, particularly in a video on my YouTube feed that said all endings, and I think it showed in the thumbnail a picture of Alear, who we've now seen in a flashback with the red hair and the black clothes, in a presumably bad ending. And seeing the way things were playing out right here, I thought maybe I got the bad ending. But I guess it also didn't make much sense, because there wasn't really any dialogue choices or stuff that really impacted the story, I felt like we've seen in like Three Houses and stuff. But at the same time, in Three Houses, I kind of remember the requirements to play Edelgard's one route were kind of weird too. So I know sometimes, I think that one particularly, they tied it to supports a bit too. But if that was the end, I would have been pretty disappointed, because I'm under the impression there's 5 more chapters. There's at least 3 paralogs I haven't done that I'm aware of. I still don't think I've unlocked a single ace support conversation. That would have been a lot to cut out right there. Granted, that's not what happened, but I just sort of want to make a point that if you're going to do that sort of thing with an ending, it should only really be like 1 map or so. Not that much content, especially nowadays when people can easily find out. But yeah, the first thing we learn is that we'll just call her Evil Veil, but the helm Zephia created so that Evil Veil can suppress True Veil was cracked by Marnie, and also probably by having an intense battle, True Veil was able to take back over their body. The thing that sort of bugged me with that was why they didn't take the helmet the hell off at that point. I mean, they established Marnie cracked it, but the helmet still had enough power to control her throughout that entire battle. I think that that helmet was still a true threat that could have easily been taken care of right there, and should have been more of a priority, I guess. So Alear literally dies. And at that point, Sombron is able to take all the rings, which is something like we see even in the story, and of course through the gameplay, that Alear sort of distributes the rings amongst the party. And they kind of did something like this earlier in the story, but I don't know, to me it just didn't make sense. Like, yeah, I could see, okay, Alear's dead, the emblems aren't there to help you right now, but for him to just instantly have all the rings just felt kind of off. They could have maybe done something, because after that, Alear and True Veil, whose body was taken back over by Evil Veil, sort of have a conversation in some sort of, I don't know, spirit world, whatever. I don't know. Maybe they could have established that at that point, go back and forth, or at least set up where Sombron is going around disarming and taking the rings from everyone else. I guess you can make the argument as to why he doesn't just kill them, or in that case you can say that he just wants them to see the world suffer or whatever, or that this was meant to make us fear Sombron's power, but I don't know, him achieving his goal was more than enough to do that, I guess. Before the sequence with Veil and Alear, we see a flashback of Alear confronting Sombron with Lumera in a flashback, and that to me just brought up more questions than answers. Like, I don't know, he was already sort of calling her mother and already turned against Sombron, so it's kind of like, why? He says he wants to be a good dragon or whatever, but what made him stand out from, say, the rest of his siblings in terms of being taken in by Lumera or abandoned by Sombron? And that's something I hope they address, because like I said, it just felt sort of off without that context, in my opinion. But back to Veil and Alear, Veil's kind of like, well, the only thing I can really do is summon Corrupted, which sort of makes Alear realize, wait, what if you use that power to revive my body as a Corrupted? Which I actually kind of like that development. It kind of makes sense in this world. At this point, I think another missed opportunity was Hyacinth's whole story. Because when you kill him, he's corrupted as well. I don't remember if this happened with, I think Morian was the other corrupted character we fought. But I remember with Hyacinth, he sort of had this monologue apologizing to his daughters and wishing them a better future or whatever. So I think that's something that could have been brought up right now. Like, we've seen a little humility from other corrupted. Maybe there's still a way that I can control myself. And then True Veil breaks free from Evil Veil and does what she said she was going to do. Alear is revived as a corrupted. But I think there was kind of an issue, at least in my opinion, at this point, is that it really didn't feel like anything happened. Like, even if they did something really silly and stupid, like changed one of the hair eye colors, I feel like there should have been something to signify this as a major deal. So far, all I've seen is some different stat changes, and now there's two different ways to summon a emblem ring. There's the Divine Way and the Fall Way, and now Alear's summoning in the Fall Way instead of the Divine Way, which is probably not going to last. I'm assuming that either with the help of Veil or maybe in discovering his mother's gift that she left behind from earlier in the story, that he'll figure that out. But even then, I really feel like they should have done something to show some sort of struggle in taking control of this new form. Almost similar to what we saw from Veil, True Veil, and Evil Veil. Only this time the sort of zombified Alear and real Alear. We could have seen him, struggle to talk or have full control over his body or something. What they could have even done with the next map, which would have been really interesting, is what if for one or two turns you got to play as Alear, but then for one or two turns Alear becomes taken over by the new corrupt form and is now an enemy, and you have to try to not kill him and not have him kill you. That could have been really interesting. I'm not sure how that would have played out. Maybe they still do that. I haven't played the next map yet, but I don't know. I feel like they could have done more. I had very similar feelings when they sort of revealed Alear was Sombron's child. So I guess I'm not too surprised to see it sort of play out like this again, but I don't know. All those major developments after that story chapter sort of just still aren't really sitting right with me. One thing I will say, though, is that I've said before, the soundtrack's fine, but it's not really as good in my taste as some of the other games. But the last chapter, and the chapter before as well, I think was a bit better, a bit closer to what I personally like. I wouldn't call it ID Purpose or Folded Winds quality, but definitely better in my opinion. For my taste, once again, I'm sure it's fine for most people. As for the actual map itself, it was fine. No special gimmicks or anything. The big challenge here, which it is in most maps, is trying to manage, like, when you hit the bosses. And then you had Zephyr and Gris charging you at the same time, and you had other units who would sort of be in range when you go and attack them that could strike back the next turn. And then particularly when you're facing off against Evil Veil, because she can probably one-hit kill anyone. I forget if it was Ivy or Gold Mary, who both have pretty good defense and resistance. They're pretty balanced there. She completely destroyed them, so I knew as soon as she was within range, she had to be taking care of that turn, which was unfortunate because a bunch of reinforcements come in, and I don't think you're supposed to defeat them because then more come. They're probably meant just to overwhelm you if you keep going with the mission. But I just hate seeing all that XP be lost, and I thought I may have had to even miss some of the units who are around Veil. Luckily, I was able to find a way to take care of everyone and at least get everything there. One other small detail is that they did change. Veil got the new helmet, and then she also had a new, darker outfit. Which, I don't know, that felt kind of weird. I don't get why they didn't just have her with the darker outfit from when we knew that there was two veils. If they sort of wanted to add more distinction between the two, or even just show this as her, I don't know, promoted outfit from when she gets stronger that she wears for the rest of the story. But it felt kind of weird to just sort of introduce it and immediately cut it. Actually, another thing I thought of too is that I'm not sure how I feel about Alear. Still, in general, as a corrupted, being able to summon emblem rings at all. I think I already sort of mentioned the idea of Alear and Vale working together to do a divine awakening, but it probably would have been better to have the two of them work together to perform an awakening in general, given Vale doesn't have that ability. I feel weird about corrupted Alear having that ability, but I can see both of them still sort of having some of that ability still in them, and through working together and combining their power, being able to do it, and then maybe using Lumera's gift to transition into a divine awakening. But yeah, besides that, I did do one other mission. I did Micaiah's Paralogue. I think I already talked about it a little. The only thing I have to add to that is the map was a bit easier than a Fates My Castle map and sort of getting your units together. I think the whole map was kind of easy in general. I don't know if that's just because there are a lot of level 8 promoted maps in a row, and I was a little over leveled. I don't know, I think it would have been a little more interesting if some of the reinforcements, I think they all came from the bottom of the map. Some of them sort of came in on the left or right side and towards the middle of the map at least or something. But yeah, that one took a little quicker and a little easier than I was expecting, but it was fine, I guess. What's kind of funny, actually, so I actually started playing Engage just about at the same exact time as my one friend. I literally just boot up the game and I literally see an icon, that switch icon saying that they were now online. And I got a message that they're just booting it up at just about the same time, which was kind of funny. But after doing this mission and sort of thinking about doing this whole thing about the story, I see someone else, just someone completely random in my YouTube feed, probably hit the same point. I can kind of tell through the thumbnail and through the title of the video. I didn't watch it, but I just thought it was kind of funny. But yeah, I'm not sure if I'm going to wait for another 4 maps like I've been doing, or what I'm probably going to do is I'm just going to sort of see how the next story chapter goes, see how I'm feeling, on whether we're going to be diving into these more frequently, because shit hit the fan, I guess, in terms of the story, and if it continues to do so. But yeah, we'll see how it happens.